Hello and welcome to the first episode of Terra Talks today. My name is Emma. I have been working at Terra Caribbean for the last 7 years in sales and long-term rentals.
I'm Laura Rothschild and I'm on the Terra Luxury team, a part of the Terra group with Terra Caribbean. And I've been with Terra Luxury and Terra Caribbean now for 4 years.
And my name is Rosemary McCartney. You guys will know me as Rosie. I have been with Terra for 2 years and it's been amazing. And Emma and I and Laura are going to dive straight into what's been happening over the last few years in the rental market. So Emma, take it away.
Yeah, so we're going to touch on our long-term rental market. We will start with a bit from Ross University and then obviously that slight drama of COVID that happened, as well as the introduction of the welcome stamp, a short section on rates, and then whether furnished versus unfurnished rentals are the way to the future. So Rosie, I know that you are Miss Queen of Ross University Rentals. Can you give us a bit of a scoop?
Absolutely. So whilst I was primarily on the residential end of the Ross University Rentals, there actually was a lot of commercial that many people might not have known about. So about mid-May 2018, Adtalem, which is the mother company of Ross and all of their universities, they had reached out and essentially they were looking for a new home for Ross University because before they were in Dominica, and then obviously there was a really bad hurricane and the infrastructure couldn't support the university anymore. So they were on the hunt. I know that they were looking at several different islands, and of course they wanted to look at Barbados. And I think one of the main attractions about Barbados was the fact that we had such an incredible international airport that has direct flights to numerous countries. So with all that being said, they came to Barbados. They were looking for about 100,000 square feet of commercial space, and that's pretty tough to come by.
I was about to say how and where.
Yes. So I know that there were a lot of key players that, may not have been mentioned throughout the whole process, but I do know that everyone who was involved was extremely tasked. They had to find 100,000 square feet of commercial space, and then they had to find housing for about 1,000 students at that time. And of course, everyone knows how that went. They found Lloyd Erskine, and then there was Coverley. Yeah. Now, I know that with Coverley, they had about 300 shells that they could convert into student housing, and they had to build 100 new homes, and they had 6 months to do that.
I remember that. It was insane watching the progress.
Every time you drove into Coverley, there were like 3 new homes.
Yeah.
And I drove in like twice a day. I'm kidding. But they had a really big task ahead of them, and I think when everything was agreed, they had about 5 months left, and at that point they had just under 1,400 students. So needless to say, on the commercial end of things, they were pedal to the metal. Yeah. And then on the residential end of things is where I stepped in for the faculty. There were about 150 staff. Wow. And Terra was able to secure 83 of those rentals. And the way we did it was we worked with just over 25 agencies, and we created a portal that only the faculty had access to. Wow. And we just curated every single listing that we had our hands on and that all agencies wanted to share, and we offered it to the faculty. Now think of it as like an MLS.
Yeah.
That was actually up to date. So we had an awesome tool, and it was amazing. We got to work with all agents. We got to make great relationships, and of course, it was a big win for Terra that we were able to work with Ross so closely, and I think we have a good long-standing relationship with them.
Yeah. In terms of like faculty, were they coming down by themselves, or were they moving with families, pets?
Well, exactly that. It was a mix. So they did have mature faculty that had their kids were in university or had their own kids. There were a lot of families. We also dealt with some of the families, faculty and families that were from Dominica, because they did actually hire quite a bit of their staff was from Dominica, which is incredible because they brought them over here. And I think that was incredible for the university and for the staff as well, because Dominica's infrastructure at the time really couldn't sustain, and they were pretty much on the road to recovery in mid-2018, going into 2019.
Wow.
So it was it was a good mix. And then I do think that with the families and with the pets, it did make it a little bit trickier with the pets. People more so like kids than, you know, dogs, apparently.
Yeah.
But I think that the challenge really came with people who had pets, because landlords here, especially for furnished rentals, which is what these folks wanted, because they just wanted to come with their suitcase and their laptop.
Don't we all?
And their fur babies and their actual babies.
Yeah.
Landlords really had a struggle to say I would allow a pet because they might have had a bad experience. So we've kind of found ways around it, getting an extra deposit for pets, writing certain clauses into agreements. So it was a great learning curve.
Nice.
And it was my first rental project, so it was
Chucked in the deep end.
All the fires of hell, but it was an incredible experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
What, in terms of like rental ranges, did all faculty members have the same rental budget to work in, or did they have different?
It was entirely up to them. Some of them, you know, roomed end up like coming together. There was a group, and I actually became really good friends with them. 3 girls, and they were late 20s, early 30s, and they ended up renting this awesome spot in Maxwell together.
Wow.
And because of that, they were able to secure a higher rental rate. So that was like, a few people did that, but it really ranged between $1,000 US to $5,000 US.
Okay.
And all of them wanted furnished.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. It suddenly was just a crazy time to find furnished rentals and all together at the same time with everybody moving all at once.
The way, when we ran the stats, and Andrew, Mr. Mallory would have done a report in the 2018 Red Book, and when we ran the stats, about 70% of our stock was taken up by Ross University.
That's insane.
And I think what also came into play is after a certain point, students were allowed to live off of campus.
Right.
So not only is the local market competing with the Ross faculty that came in, they were then competing with the mature students who were allowed to live off campus.
Yeah.
So I do remember that time, and I remember all of the agents at Terra, anytime a listing came on, they were like, don't show it to Rosie. She's going to rent it.
Hide your listings.
Yeah, I was everyone's favorite at the time. But
Yeah. Well, props to you, girl. Well
yeah,
done.
thank you.
Big congrats. And then obviously a slight thing called COVID hit, small pandemic. And I mean, just looking at our market reports that we've been doing, because obviously we do the Q1 to Q4 market reports, hopefully annually from now on. We just saw rental revenue and transactions drop by nearly 40%, which was a little bit crazy. And then Auntie Mia had the bright idea of introducing the welcome stamp.
Yeah. Yeah, Welcome Stamp was an amazing initiative, and I think it really helped that we were the first ones out the gate to offer this incredible idea of being able to live and work somewhere like Barbados. It almost feels like a dream come true, really.
Yeah.
And I think that opened the floodgates. And ironically, when we looked at the welcome stampers that were coming in, I believe the number one reason 40% of people that wanted to come to Barbados was down to lifestyle, so our way of life. So yes, COVID is going on, but it gave them an opportunity to basically have this lifestyle for a year.
Yeah.
And some of them, I believe, are staying on even longer now, 2-3 years. Some people are talking about staying for. So it's nice to have that option to be able to stay longer if you do want to.
Yeah. What I found amazing was that 76% of people had never even been to Barbados.
Incredible. It's just incredible. And under, I think the age as well was under 50 primarily. Was that?
Yeah. 75% of them were under 45 years old.
Yeah, well, their goal, when they first launched, I remember specifically, they wanted to go after millennials.
Yeah.
And I think they did capture a certain amount of millennial population, but they really kind of pivoted towards families.
Absolutely.
You know, so many families have moved here over the last year, and I think that's also incredible.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I mean, yeah, like you said, digital nomads, like 67% of the people that came on the welcome stamp were by themselves. And then, we've started to see, well, it was 33% when we last did the report, but I'm pretty sure that number will have increased now because schools were at an absolute all-time high. Yeah. There was no room at Providence or Codrington.
No.
So, yeah.
I actually had a family that couldn't come over because they couldn't get all 4 children in the same school. And it just goes to show the demand for those types of schools.
Yeah.
In their instance, they needed a school that was both primary and secondary, and there's not that many actually that do both, which I tried to explain to them. But in the end, it did seem that Providence, I think all of the schools in the private sector were pretty much to capacity.
Yeah, goodness me. And then in terms of like where like welcome stampers were looking at, were there any like prime locations?
Absolutely. There were two main ones.
And what were they, Rosie?
St. James and Christchurch. And to be specific, what was the most frequent thing that I read? I want to be walking distance to the ocean. And honestly, why not? You're moving to Barbados. You want to be close to the ocean. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find good price properties within walking distance to the ocean, you know. So some people might have had a couple trade-offs, but that was the top requirement. And then also those areas looked like Whole Town. Some people actually didn't mind going as far up as Speightstown, which is also incredible because that's one of my favorite towns in the whole of Barbados.
Yeah.
And then Christchurch, they were looking at places like Hastings, Worthing, Atlantic Shores. Those were like the top neighborhoods you were hearing about.
Yeah. I mean, I was just looking at some stats this morning, and year on year, we were up by 74% during Q3 when the welcome stamp was introduced. And our average rental range went from $1,400 to $24,000 Barbados dollars a month, which we'd never seen before up until that time. And then we suddenly saw an increase in the demand for 6-bedroom rentals as well. Like, what was your experience with, because obviously then people wanted like shorter-term rentals too.
Yeah, so I think that you've just nailed it on the head. I think that we have covered the welcome stamp really, really well. But of course, there is a huge number of people that also came over on what we called the welcome stamp light, which is basically testing the water. They know they can come here for 3 months, test it out, really see if this can be their home for a year before taking the plunge into the welcome stamp, or perhaps going and coming back the following year and doing the same thing. So I think that we did find, particularly over December to February when it's freezing cold everywhere else, that there was a huge demand for these types of rentals. And it was really difficult actually to secure that number of properties in that short time frame. Which I know we all were struggling with across the board, because it is a bit of a crossover. It's something that we do, but obviously not as much as we did in Q3 and Q4.
I mean, I also found that the rental rates increased overall because of these midterm rentals coming in.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think it sort of slightly alters the local market as well and corporate market going forward. And I did have a few conversations with clients where they thought that we had a COVID market here. And I was like, absolutely not.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think that's a harsh reality for people to swallow as well, because they are expecting to come, and because of what's happening worldwide, they're expecting that it's going to be the same here. And unfortunately, at least with the rental market, it's quite the opposite. Prices are going up. Owners are holding out as well, because they know that a lot of the times if they wait, the right person's going to come. But you also have some owners that are like, you know what, I don't want to just toss the towel in. Let's take it. Let's work with this budget. So I do think that this has also been a great learning curve for all of us when it comes to negotiating rates, and also having that tough conversation of short-term going to long-term. I know that we've all had to have it, and you know, nobody wants to hear, if you go to long-term, you're going to make half the amount of money, but also nobody wants to hear, if you don't, you're going to be vacant for 6 months.
Exactly.
So
it's basically coming to the realization that obviously every holiday rental going into last season was not confirmed. You know, you didn't know if they could, you know, 60 days before they might say, you know what, regulations haven't changed, it's still difficult, I'd rather come over at a later stage. And our company is great, where we want to encourage people to come back, and obviously we just allocate those funds for a future rental. But for owners, that's then a vacancy. So they could have had somebody in for 3 months over the winter and got at least something to cover the costs. And that was the realization they really had to come to.
Yeah, I mean, compared from 2019 to 2020, our maximum rental rate was 3 times higher in 2020, just to put in perspective in terms of like growth. But like you said, you can't really say that to somebody that's rented on the short-term market and is having to go to long-term, because they're still seeing the daily figure versus now a monthly figure.
Exactly.
And including utilities, and are you including them and not? And especially because it was a learning curve for us. I've never done 2 to 5 month rentals, really. I've always done 6 to 12 or 24 month rentals. So having to sort of shift for us was a learning curve too. But think we did all right.
We did. I truly believe that everybody did okay in real estate in Barbados during that time, because there were so many clients. I think everybody was busy with the rentals, and
we were very lucky.
I saw a lot of teams expand during this time as well, which is great because then you're hiring more people.
Absolutely.
And you're
Agreed.
helping the economy.
And Terra, Terra ourselves, we've just taken on 2 new agents as well. So it is definitely a business that is doing okay during these times.
In terms of like the type of properties that people are looking at, did you see like personally, were more of your clients looking towards like houses, apartments, townhouses, and like average bedrooms that they were looking for?
Space. It was all about space. I think that was a common theme globally through COVID, was that if we're going to have to go into lockdown, at least we have a beautiful property and outside space that we can enjoy. Barbados, we're very lucky. We have the sunshine. So our lockdowns are never going to be as bad as other places, because we can still get outside and enjoy the space as long as we have it.
Yeah.
And I think it was key in a lot of people's search, particularly with families, that they had a house as opposed to an apartment, which is what you would routinely stay when you're on vacation.
Agreed.
But if you're here for a year, you need a home. You need somewhere that is going to be big enough for everybody, and also incorporate the space that you need as your office, because this isn't just a house, it's also a place that you're going to be working from.
Working remotely,
so,
the new fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I never would have thought I would be in a position today where you have 2 clients that have very good budgets up to US $10,000, and we cannot find them a house on the West Coast right now in any of the main developments. And it just shows.
Calling all new developers.
Landlords, please step forward. We need you. It's pretty impressive. But did you find that you mentioned welcome stamp light, and obviously then you've got the welcome stamp where people pay for that visa for the 12 months to stay. Have you found that people have then sort of gone, oh, we'll try it for 2 to 3 months, but then extended?
Absolutely.
100%.
Because they come in, like all of us, they will come and they say, oh, wow, I could see myself living here.
Yeah.
I think also what we should mention is that even within the local market, there was a lot of changes that happened. Like I myself, when you realize you have to be at home working, and your space is not cut out for that, you go a little bit mental, because you need to have different spaces and you need to compartmentalize your time and make sure, like, if you're in the living room and you're watching TV, you're not down in your computer.
Agreed.
It's not healthy. So I did find a lot of locals as well came and said, I want to either upsize find a place that has an extra bedroom that I can turn into an office, or you also found that they were having financial constraints and they said, I need to downsize. Yeah. So whilst the welcome stamp was booming, you still had a lot of movement happening in the local market. And luckily, we were still able to rent unfurnished and appliances only properties. Now, they didn't thrive at all, but we were still able to get quite a few done. When you compare it, it really isn't that much. But we also had to tell landlords that when they came to us to list those properties, hey, we don't have a high demand, but we'll do everything that we can to find you a tenant.
And I think also, just to add to that fact, our video walkthroughs helped us secure so many more rentals than we would have done prior to that. It's definitely a new way to be doing real estate in sales and rentals. Like you said, if you could show somebody that space and work with them, whether local or foreign market, then you could push forward on it for sure. Have you found that since the rental market sort of shifted and become extremely busy for us, any welcome stampers wanting to buy in future?
Absolutely. In fact, one of my clients we're struggling to find this rental for, they now just are thinking, we can't find a good quality rental home. We want to control our experience now. We've been here a year. They're staying for a second year and potentially a third. And they've decided, you know what, we're going to buy. We're going to buy, and we're going to go away for the summer. We're going to wait for that sale to close and then ready for September when the girls go back to school. And they really do feel settled here. They said that their plan was to go to Spain, and it didn't work out because of COVID. And actually, Barbados turned out perfect because they were coming from Canada and it's a better time zone. So I can see them potentially even moving their business here. They love Barbados. Yeah. And they're fully invested.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, when it comes down to like commercial rentals, that took a complete dive over the last year. We did see a bit of an increase because of our corporation tax being between 1 to 5.5%. And we have sort of seen relocation with families from UK and Canada. Are you starting to get an increase now with corporate commercial rentals?
I think that commercial rentals, what we've seen is this now hybrid way of working.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we're ever going to go back to what we were before. I think that what we've seen from this is that there's some people that have to be in an office. That's how they work best. And then there's some people that actually, you know what, they have families, they have children, they have responsibilities, and they actually are more comfortable and produce more when they're comfortable in their own home.
Yeah.
So I think that what we are seeing is basically either big commercial companies are now looking at office space, either downsizing for this hybrid way of the new normal. And then you're getting some businesses that may actually need to upsize because they need more space and they need perhaps to bring in extra entities to make it a safer environment to work from. So
yeah, I mean, our commercial rentals were down by 80% in Q3, which, I mean, obviously COVID adds to the fact. And like you said, working from home.
Yeah.
I mean, personally for me, I've done a few commercial rentals now, which is awesome. But yeah, I was almost sort of shocked when I got that call saying, hi, we're looking for office space. But like you rightly said, some people will always have to work from an office.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for that. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Rosie, you touched on pet deposit earlier. What's involved? I mean, could you just run us through a lease and then obviously how a pet deposit works?
Why don't I? Okay, so typically a lease is really just between the landlord and the tenant.
Right.
Whatever agency you go through, they always have a lease that they provide. Some landlords prefer to use their own, written by an attorney. So it's really up to your landlord what they prefer to use. The lease states, you know, how long the rental's for, any special conditions, who's responsible for what, and then payment schedules.
Right.
Now, in your lease, the initial payment to secure a property is a minimum of a security deposit, which is equivalent to 1 month's rent, and your first month's rent. Some landlords ask for 3 months up front, so first, last, and security, but it's again up to the landlord.
Right.
Now, when you have a pet, and I have 2 pets, so when you have a pet, sometimes you have to get creative and say, hey, I know you're not comfortable with this, but if I gave you extra assurance that I'm going to take care, I'm going to give you extra $1,000 or extra $500, and this is on top of your security deposit, and it just kind of shows an extra piece of good faith that, look, I'm serious about this. I don't want to give away $1,000.
Yeah.
So of course I want that money back. So that's me saying I'm going to do everything I can to make sure your property is kept well, and I hope you give me back my money at the end of it, because I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. But from a landlord's perspective, that extra money gives them, you know, comfort, because in the event that, and it happens that a pet chews up a door, you know,
little wear and tear.
Little wear and tear if they're having a little tantrum. It's just a little cushion for them, just in case. And some landlords will always say absolutely not, because they've had bad experiences. And for the most part, I do find that we're actually seeing a lot of people come around with that.
Yeah.
But there are some properties, when it comes to condominiums and townhouses, that it's written into the act that no pets are allowed.
Yeah, I think there's only sort of 4 condos I can actually think of on Ireland right now that will allow pets, which I guess for clients coming from overseas, Canada and the UK,
kind of bizarre for them.
They're used to it, you know, in the US.
It's unusual.
So having to have that conversation, what do you mean, you know?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. But I also noticed that furnished rentals had increased and accounted for 91% during the course of last year, which is very different compared to when we've worked with embassies and those sort of corporate clients in the past where they brought down their container of furniture.
Right.
Laura, did you find that, you know, there was one massive increase for furnished supply?
100%. I mean, we historically have always had more demand for furnished properties. You know, it's always been more niche market to be looking for unfurnished. And as you said, quite rightly, it's corporate clients that are going to be here for a number of years. And that switched. It's now welcome stamp. They're here for 12 months. They want to come with their suitcases and flip-flops, and that's it. They don't want to bring or go through the hassle of bringing furniture down just for 12 months. So yes, we did, and it became a bit of a problem because a lot of the unfurnished stock was sitting on the market for much longer, as a lot of corporate clientele were not coming through because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult question sometimes to have or ask a potential landlord, would you consider furnishing? Because it is a big expense. And we all know how much things are in Barbados and how much the duties are. But there is a way to do it and not break the bank in doing it. So have that conversation with your agent. I had an experience with a landlord who owned a 3-bedroom townhouse, and they basically went to, it'd been sitting on the market for a very long time, and they decided to nip it in the bud and furnish it. And it happened because the second person had given notice in the same block, and he couldn't have 2 properties vacant. It was just not an option.
Well, you can't back that by vacancy, right? Can you?
100%. So he said, before that tenant moves out, we're furnishing and renting that one so that I'm not left with 2 vacant properties.
Did you rent them?
Yes, we did. Woo-hoo. We did.
One of them was to a Ross client.
There you go. It was actually Rosie was quick in there.
Yeah.
Soon as it was furnished, I think she was through the door.
Yeah.
So
I think it was
good.
when you were even furnishing it, I was looking at the package that you were sending to the landlord, and I was like, that works. Yeah, we can do it. What price? Okay, cool.
Yeah, boom, done.
And that is how all the agents at Terra were very upset with me.
In terms of like anybody listening that is thinking of becoming a landlord, what are your sort of like top tips for somebody that's thinking, maybe I should jump into becoming a landlord?
Now is the time. Now is the time to really start thinking if you want to have an investment. Because at the moment we're seeing so much demand. Your property, as long as it's in a good location, it fits the criteria which a Terra agent can easily guide you on, we would be delighted for stock. We are constantly looking for new properties and good quality homes.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I always say my rule of thumb is if you can imagine yourself living there, then there will absolutely be a tenant that will live there.
Yeah.
And as I said, going back to furnishing, it doesn't have to be expensive. And we have a very good relationship with a number of the suppliers on island. One of the suppliers actually quoted my guy, did the presentation on PowerPoint because he was in London. And between them, they managed to get to a price that he was comfortable to pay. And I think in total for the full works, fully fitted kitchen, all the appliances, down to the cutlery and crockery, he came in at just under 35,000 Barbados dollars, which...
That's great.
And that was for a 2-bed?
That was actually 3-bed.
Okay.
Yeah, there was another 2-bed downstairs in the basement that we furnished for under 30. So
Okay.
Well, that's fantastic.
yeah.
So, I mean, a little bit daunting, but actually if you are sort of willing to jump in the deep end, then great.
Absolutely. I think that...
And then we would love to rent it.
Yeah. And the thing is, talk with your agent, discuss what you're looking to spend, and we can easily guide you to something that makes sense. And also with long-term rentals, as we said and keep saying, vacancy is not really the best for any long-term renting investment. So we will try and pitch it at what we think we can know that we can achieve.
Yeah.
So Emma, now you've been the question master for this whole podcast, but the real question for you that I want you to just divulge in, because you are an incredible rental agent.
Thanks.
If you were a tenant right now, or you're coming in welcome stamp on your local market, what would you suggest for people to be doing right now before they even sign any agreement?
Do your homework, obviously, number one. Speak to your preferred agent of choice, preferably, Terra Caribbean, Terra Luxury. But no, I mean, find an agent that you trust and you work well with. You need to do your homework in terms of your figures. Once you sign a lease, you are committed to that lease for a year if you sign up for a year. And normally in the lease, you've got an exercise period for a certain amount of months and a notice period. So you need to be able to make sure that you can afford it, number one. So work out your budget, work out what you want to spend on utilities. If you have a pet, maybe think about sort of location. You're probably going to need a garden space. Do you have a car? Are you going to be needing to be close to public transport? And, do you need furniture and those kind of things? So, really do your homework. Know what you can work with, because there's no point stretching yourself either with a rental or even a mortgage and becoming uncomfortable. And then look at location. Take a drive by, go in the day, obviously, look at the property, take a second pair of eyes to help you. But drive by again at night. Like I do that for my personal rental where I am now. I loved it in the day, and then I drove by at night and do I still feel the same? Yes, because you know what it's like. You walk into that property and go, yeah, this is the one. Mm-hmm. And it's such a nice feeling, and making that home your home and adding that extra touch is awesome.
Absolutely. And I also found, like, when I was speaking with clients, I just had to remind them as well that this is your office space and your home space. So having designated work areas is really crucial. I think Rosie touched on that with her own space when she was moving.
Oh, I got it completely wrong during COVID the first time.
I don't think anybody got anything right the first round of COVID.
It was hard.
Yeah.
So obviously we worked very hard, well, you especially, Rosie, during the time with Ross University, and then a small dilemma called COVID hit, and there was a global pandemic, and Ross University left, which was a major disruption for Barbados, for the real estate market. And we're suddenly talking to landlords about, okay, they're now leaving, and you know the tenancies ended, and we're now relisting everything. So we went from having no rentals to suddenly loads of rentals, and
way more supply than demand.
Yeah. And what are we going to do with them? And obviously the lockdown happened, and everybody was working from home. And I know during that time we had a decrease in transactions by nearly 40%, which we'd never seen before. Especially during that time of the year, we get quite a few corporate rentals relocating during that time. But then Auntie Mia had this fantastic idea of the welcome stamp, and I think really saved us as real estate agents, and also for the Barbados economy. I think without that, we would be in a very different situation right now.
100%. And I think the quick thinking and acting backed up with the fact that it was, I think, 96% of people from the Welcome Stamp survey that we conducted, which covered all of our applicants through our database of knowledge. We sent out a survey. I think it was 96% of them actually said that
I think I have the stats here.
It was a very easy process,
Yeah.
which is kudos to the Barbados government, because we all know that they're not always quick off the mark, and the process is not always very easy and straightforward. So I think that was huge in, you know, converting this interest to actually saying, this is easy, let's do it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I wanted to just touch on that as well from the immigration perspective. I mean, wherever you go in the world, there's so much red tape to get your status. And I think for Barbados, what they did was they just said it's a 1 week process. Come on, guys, 1 week, and you can get everything.
Yeah, right, didn't we?
And you can get everything sorted in 1 week. To me, that was where they started off right. I know at the beginning they were completely overwhelmed, because when this launched, I mean, this was on BBC, this was on all the major TV stations in the world.
Yeah. Their marketing launch was fantastic.
I think you can safely say we went viral.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. I mean, I had friends, I mean, obviously I grew up in England, and I had friends messaging me asking if it was real. Was this a hoax? And how can I get there? And can I come live with you? And I obviously said no, and you can find your own place. But it was...
It was amazing, and it still gives me goosebumps to this day to be like on BBC News and hearing about our little island. It's huge, and you know, for a little population of 285,000 people, I think it was absolutely what we needed exactly at the right time.
Yeah.
And the legislation behind it, they were able, which is also something that we should really commend the government on, they were able to write the legislation for that in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, typically when it comes to those sort of legalities and paperwork, it does take months to get these kind of things done.
Or years. Let's not forget about Brexit.
Gosh, what a painful topic.
We've spoken about enough suffering. But I think that was also something that we should really give them a round of applause for, because they were able to have this amazing idea and execute it, and not halfway execute it. They really completely looked at it at large. They looked at it from the immigration perspective, the tax perspective, the schooling perspective, and then obviously they gave this incredible opportunity to real estate agents, landlords. You know, even if you weren't a landlord listed with a real estate agent company, Airbnb, you know, all of those avenues, everybody benefited. Restaurants, everyone. So,
I think that's what I actually really enjoyed, like having those new conversations with people that were thinking about becoming a landlord, that had never up until this time thought, actually I would, you know, or maybe I don't actually need my massive house and I'll downsize to a condo. And then suddenly just shifting perspective. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. And yeah, we're very, very lucky in that respect. I had quite a few clients come down from sort of like Florida area in the US. I think especially with how the states were handling COVID at the time, I got quite a lot of like the Florida winter birds come down, as well as UK and Canada. Where were your clients from?
I would say predominantly, and I think it was quoted in our Welcome Stamp survey as well, that I think 47% of them came from the US, which was a market that really was a minority market. Pre-COVID, you know, I think the vast majority of our investors and corporate rentals, especially with the banks being Canadian, was the UK and Canada. And again, this shift happened thanks to the Welcome Stamp, because we're now targeting a different market. Historically, we've targeted retirees that are going to be here 4 months, can afford to be here for 4 months and not have to go back to work. Whilst America, it's very different. They only get 2 weeks vacation a year, and they work really hard. And they don't want to jump on 2 planes to get to Barbados. But when the Welcome Stamp opened up this new type of clientele, and now we're seeing, as you said, you know, under 45 was the predominant age, and they're coming sometimes with families. I remember one family who came here on the Welcome Stamp. They stayed for a year, and she said, this is the first time in 6 months my 2-year-old has played with another child. And that to me was significant, because, you know, that's the reason why she's here, is so that her children and herself and her husband can actually have a lifestyle and actually engage with other people and not be isolated to their homes, even though it wasn't, you know, we all know how the states handle COVID, but she felt safer staying inside and shielding. So I think that was huge.
I mean, Barbados does offer a great lifestyle. We've actually all moved here, or moved back here. And yeah, I think Barbados has done fantastically well to keep it going. I think for the next year, like, personally, in my opinion, I think rentals are going to continue to increase. 100%. I think we're still going to see the Welcome Stamps come in. And I mean, with clients in the UK, I know they were getting them at sort of like 5 a.m. to sort of do their morning works. Then they were matching 9 a.m. London time and finishing sort of during early afternoon and then going for a surf. I mean, if that's not a great work-life balance, I don't know what is. Are you still seeing interest as well in the Welcome Stamp?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it's something that's going to go away. I think it's something that's here for good. I do think that it's, you know, on the whole, a lot of people have been saying how amazing it is, and our marketing is best as word of mouth. So I think that's encouraging. We're also seeing these Welcome Stampers deciding that they want to purchase, seeing as 76% of them didn't even know Barbados and never even been here before. You know, we're seeing buyers that we may never have seen had this not happened. You know, I think that we are very fortunate to have had this opportunity and leveraged it to the degree in which we've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that 75% of the people that came were under 45, and this, you know, influx of digital nomads, that's huge. Like, we are now fashionable again. Yeah. And there was that risk, like you said earlier, of, you know, being more popular with an older generation, you know, 50 plus, and the fact that people that are our ages now coming in and going, actually, I maybe actually can't afford to buy a home in London, and I do want to potentially invest now in Barbados. That's massive.
100%. And I think it's also noteworthy that the US, obviously the time difference is more similar to our time zone and Canada. So I think it's noteworthy because obviously it's easier for them to work from here, where it's maybe an hour or no time difference, as opposed to UK, where it is 5 hours ahead. Yeah. And again, I think even a lot of people that come over to the UK have made it work with their employer. Yeah. So, you know, if they're able to work from home, they do it in their own time. And I think the lifestyle definitely outweighs the lifestyle in the UK, and I can personally vouch for this.
I second that.
I think when it comes to just to tie everything together, like with, you know, the corporate rentals, the office space, the Welcome Stamp, everything, just tying it all together. I think what the Welcome Stamp did, especially for Barbados, it was a catalyst. It just set off so many different revenue streams, so many different avenues for people to benefit from. Yeah. And even like in the work environment, like now people feel comfortable. They don't have to come into work 5 days a week. They can do it from home. And I think it has made such a big impact on people physically, emotionally as well. they went through these times where they were, you know, just stuck at home for so long, and all we did was FaceTimes and talking to each other.
Zoom.
When the welcome stamp launched, we were now coming out of, you know, we came out of our first lockdown, and first of all, we missed having all the tourists on island.
Yeah.
And then it was another way for us, like, as soon as it launched, it just started to go back to, you know, normal, quote unquote, is what we can call it. But again, it was just a huge catalyst for us. And I think also a catalyst for people to actually get here, as you said, like a total different demographic.
Yeah.
And one thing I think that we haven't touched on at all, which I think was so incredible as well, is that the fact that there was all these different Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I know everybody in this room could put their hand up and say that they learned so much about Barbados from this Facebook group.
There were things I did not know.
But it was an avenue for people to get support.
Yeah.
And ask questions that maybe their real estate agent might not have known. It might have been a tax question if they're coming from Canada. Heck, I can't say that I'm 100% versed in that, but I learned so much. And I would always tell anyone that reached out to me, have you looked into this group?
Yeah, same.
Because it was a huge support system for them, and they made friends. And, you know, I've seen so many people on those groups, on there about 5 or 6 that I'm a part of, that have said, hey, I'm thinking about buying here.
Yeah.
And again, big catalyst. So that, I think of welcome stamp, and then I think of
it's just
science.
been such a lovely sense of community. And I mean, Barbados as a whole, that's what I loved about moving here. There is that sense of community. People look after you. People look out for you. There's that support network, and that Facebook group definitely adds to that support. And I'm still fascinated when I read the report that Terra Caribbean and Terra Luxury did on the welcome stamp, and, you know, looked at those facts and figures to, you know, just to check and see, are we all feeling the same here? Is everybody, you know, is the rental market great for everybody, or is it just, you know, one person that's saying Barbados is everything? And the facts don't lie.
No.
And I actually really can't wait for the second year when they do this again, because, I mean, just reading those and facts and figures, seeing where people have come from, the rental ranges that they're using. I mean, they're not, you know, small rentals. These, your minimum is 5,000 Barbados a month. That's a lot.
Yeah. And it, you know, it's important to note that, you know, a lot of businesses are now considering you know, setting up in Barbados. It's now becoming a lot more attractive. You referenced earlier, corporation tax has been slashed to between 1% and 5.5%. That's huge. And again, it's a ripple effect, you know. Once they feel comfortable in Barbados and they've got an idea of how everything works here, they're now thinking seriously, you know what? I'm gonna actually bring my business here. This is a perfect spot for me right now for the next 5 to 10 years.
I literally had that conversation yesterday with a family from Canada, and they came on the welcome stamp, and they're now relocating their company down here. And
can you imagine how hard it's going to be to convince people to ever move here for work?
I mean, twist my rubber off.
But also, I know Emma and I definitely, because we work on some rentals together, but we've definitely seen an increase in corporate rentals. So companies are again feeling comfortable to say, you know what, things have stabilized enough. Let's bring back in
the confidence is back.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's also another revenue stream for vendors as well, and landlords, to say, you know, that action is still, it's slowly creeping back, but it's there.
Yeah.
And Emma, you are the one that dedicates a lot of time to these quarterly reports, you and our colleague Betty.
Yeah.
How has it been, like, over the last year? How have we performed? What are the numbers saying?
We've done very well, actually. I have to say, year on year for 2019, we increased our transactions just for long-term rentals, not even sales, by 111%. Cheers to that, ladies.
Wow. Yes.
That's huge. And I think that just comes down to a sort of our team, our ethics, working really hard, and obviously the success of the welcome stamp, our local community with our rentals as well, and then corporate too. And I mean, yeah, in terms of ranges, we've had rental ranges from 1,000 Barbados a month up to 36,000 Barbados a month. Up until this welcome stamp, I was never doing anything really past 10,000 Barbados a month. Yep. So it really just shows, the level of client that's coming down, the luxury client that's coming down, that's rediscovering Barbados, that's choosing Barbados over other Caribbean islands, number one. As you mentioned, we've got great infrastructure. We've got, the airport. we've got a lot of amenities. We are a sort of small city, as it were. And then, choosing places that have had, different, look at Florida. People came down from the winter birds, which is great. And then, in Q3 as well, with the introduction of the welcome stamp, the demand for 6-bedroom houses suddenly existed. Yeah. Before that, we really didn't see that many. You'd have like 2 to 3 and 4. That was extremely popular. But suddenly 6 bedrooms became popular. Yeah. And what I found amazing was the highest average rental rates were achieved for 1 and 2 and 4 bedroom properties during Q3 and Q4. They increased by 33%.
Incredible. It really was incredible. And timing is key. But kudos to Barbados for being the first out the gate and getting the welcome stamp initiative over the line in as little stress as possible.
Yeah. What I also found interesting too when I was doing these quarterly reports with my colleague Betty was the fact that, there's a massive increase for houses because people wanted the space, people wanted the garden space. However, apartments year on year decreased, but they still accounted for 51% of rentals. So for anybody panicking, thinking, oh my gosh, I own a condo and it's not going to get rented, they definitely will rent. We are still renting them. We saw a slight shift because people wanted that space, especially with those bringing their pets down. I think that's something that Barbados developers really need to look into. I know we talk about it a lot when we meet with new developers that are sort of having projects. There was a new one in Speightstown that happened recently, and one of the first questions I asked was obviously the price and what have you, but are you going to allow pets? Because everybody wants to bring their pet. Yeah. You've got to move with the times, otherwise you'll get left behind. 100%. And the welcome stamp was something that we got ahead of the time with, and the success for that was, it's showing in the numbers, which is awesome.
Because I do think that is the number one reason why people, move away from apartments is their pet is their baby. As Rosie said, that's part of their family.
I have 2 fur babies. So my question to you guys is, what do you think is going to happen next? Because Ross University is bringing back their students. They're bringing in new hires. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen in the rental market next? Because if you don't feel tight when it comes to finding a new property for clients, what do you think is going to happen?
I think my work hours just got extended and there's going to be some wine drunk for sure. It's going to be, I think, it's going to be a stressful but fun time, shall we say. I think the demand, obviously, as you said, is going to increase, and the supply, well, it's definitely decreased, and we are going to start to have to really persuade some people to maybe become landlords.
I think what's going to be the most interesting is now with everybody being double vaccinated, our tourism is going to go back up. Yeah. So people who were in long term that were short term before, they're going to go back to short term. Yeah. And then our long term stock is also going to decrease. Yeah. So it's going to be a great time for us.
Basically, we need to expand Barbados.
I think more people have to do what my client has done and invest. Invest as a landlord. Invest if you know that Barbados is always going to be special to you. There's significant investment opportunities here. You can have a home, and then as long as it covers itself, which is what most buyers are looking for, is just for it to wash itself. And we can assure you we will find rentals to help you with those costs. So I think it will be that we are going to have to really look for more listings, but I also believe that some of these welcome stampers are already transitioning into buyers anyway. So
quite a few.
It's targeting a new type of investor. And even in the last 5 years, you look at how things have changed with our tourism product. We are now a little bit back to our roots, I would say. You go along the West Coast and you now have several beach bars which actually feel like you're in Barbados. A lot of my clients say that. They want to feel that they're on an island. They don't want to go to a place where they could be anywhere in the world, like the States. So Lakabam, Seashed, none of those were around 5 years ago, and I think that is the direction in which we're going. We're trying to bring in a new type of clientele and attract them and say, look, our amenities match what we're offering. It's not just sun, sea, and sand. We have cool places that you can go. And the number one reason why people come back is the people anyway, It's the friendliness and the community, the sense of a community and feeling safe.
Yeah. I think there are going to be some new developments popping up. I think it's really sort of made any potential developer think and start to move forward. So yeah, I think the year ahead we'll see some new developments pop up. I think the rental market is going to go a little bit nuts. I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for it.
And I think it's noteworthy that our sister company, Blue Sky Luxury, are already in hot demand for next winter. So several properties or several categories of properties are already becoming very, very slim to book.
Fully booked up.
Fully booked up. So that pent up demand from people that have not been away for 18 months is going to hit home. And we're going to struggle, I think, to a degree, but as long as these developments come to fruition and we get some more investors and landlords, I think that hopefully we can make everybody happy.
Yeah, it should be good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the long-term rental market. I've loved speaking with you as my colleagues and friends. And just to say that, if anybody is thinking about becoming a landlord, please just reach out to us. We'd be very happy to advise you in terms of what to expect, how to get your property ready, and those looking to potentially move to Barbados or flee the family home. We'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.